All right, I think one of the positions worthy of mentioning here is that of the Speaker of the House. That's the majority party leader who serves as the presiding officer of the House. Now, the Speaker has more power in the House than the majority leader has in the Senate. And the leadership ability depends on the person and the amount of power given by party members. I think pretty recognizable as members of Congress go is the person who's serving in the position as Speaker of the House, right? Do you know who that currently is? Maybe I'm looking at my slide here. Yes, it is currently Nancy Pelosi. Oftentimes when we talk about Congress, remember what I said earlier about it, that many times people like their congressperson but may not like Congress as a whole because of how they see Congress getting stuff done or not see Congress getting stuff done. And that really relates to this idea called gridlock. Gridlock, and I will link a video in the video below, really highlights, it's like traffic, right? This example here, you see it looks like traffic, right? Where it's an inability to have a smooth flow or to get something done, right? Well, the reality is when it comes to creating legislation is that it's easier to kill a bill, right, than it is to actually pass one. Okay? Passage of a bill requires sustained sequence of victories where you have to win, and win again, and then win again, right? Ultimately, win or get the signature of the president, or as you know, the check that the president has on the Congress is that it can veto bills, right? So opponents of a bill, for example, only need to win once in order to defeat a bill, right? So it's a lot easier to kill a bill than it is to pass one. So I guess another question is gridlock a necessary evil of the system? Okay, well, what's a con to it? Well, a con, as you know, is that Congress is perceived as inefficient, wasteful, pandering to special interests, right? It's like all of the worst critiques of Congress, right? And a pro to the fact that Congress moves slow and it takes a while to pass legislation is that founders did not intend democracy to be a quick process. But the goal is not that it's fast, right? That democracy is messy in order to prevent radical change and reach compromise, right? So there's something kind of embedded in the system that causes it to be a slower process. But on the flip side of that is that does the slower process mean that more people are going to be on the same page, mean that more folks will reach compromise, right? Prohibit really big shifts and changes from happening at once, right? So you do have to, or one does have to ask themselves that or those questions rather. All right, in these last slides right here, I'd like to highlight just briefly some points about the California Legislature. Keep in mind we have the California Politics book that we are getting into right now. So basics of the California Legislature, right, is that in California there's a bicameral legislature. Remember, bi meaning two houses, where there's an assembly, right, where there's 80 members in the assembly, and there's a Senate with 40 members in the Senate. In California, it has been historically dominated by Democrats, both historically and today. And in a lot of ways, the setup of what happens in our state mirrors what's happening at the federal government. All right, so here, remember our discussion of voting districts and gerrymandering, right? Like the redrawing of district lines. Well, let's just highlight the districts in California. Let's see, this is a more recent district mapping here. And as you can see the difference, if we can kind of compare the difference here between an older district map of California. This is from 1941, you can see. So one big obvious change, right, would be from 1941, you can see the number of districts here in Northern California here at the top. And let's compare that to this more recent map. Let's see if I can see 2015. I'm trying to see that here. It's right here on the page. Okay. It just highlights that California District Number 1 is much larger than it was in the earlier period. Right? It's going to be based on the population. But check that out here. Where previously we had 1, 2, looks like there's 3 up here, and 5. It looks like in a more contemporary sense, it has become 1 district. Okay, California Legislature differences from Congress. So apportionment, right? Remember, apportionment's based on the number of people in a certain place. Remember, when it comes to the U.S. as a total, it relies on the census. Okay. Differences from Congress was that apportionment and district size in regards to those. Both houses are apportioned by population, meaning both have to do with the population size. Okay. Senate districts have about 900,000 constituents, whereas assembly districts have about 450,000 constituents. And representation in populous districts is muted, right? So like the bigger a place, right, you're going to have someone representing so many thousands of people that representation there is muted based on the high numbers of people there. All right, California Legislature differences from Congress. Okay. When it comes to redistricting, so after Prop 11 was passed in 2008, redrawing district boundaries in California became the responsibility of an independent citizens commission. Now, I would put it to you, I am putting it to you, the question that, are there benefits of having an independent citizens commission draw the districts in the state? That would be as compared with members of political parties, right, depending on who's in political power, drawing the districts. So maybe consider the question, what are the pros and cons of an independent citizens commission doing that, as compared with the pros or cons of a political party, right, based on who's in power drawing those districts. Okay. And when we consider representation in legislatures, right, we had this conversation earlier about representation at the federal government level, okay, whereas Congress and the California legislature do not represent the public demographically, meaning what the public looks like is not really mirrored at the government level. Okay, there are many more white males over the age of 40 in legislatures, right, as we've noted, than in the U.S. population. And it comes back to that question, and I think it's a good place for us to leave this on, is the question around descriptive representation, right? Remember, descriptive representation is the idea that an elected body should mirror demographically the population that it represents. Of course, that's a theory and not a reality. So we have to ask ourselves, again, in a multiracial and multi-ethnic democracy, would it serve, the public good to have more descriptive representation, right, of members of Congress or the Senate? Or is it something that doesn't matter, right? Are people able to adequately represent their constituents regardless of race, gender, profession, wealth, class, and so on and so forth? So those are the questions that we ought to be asking ourselves and see where it is that you stand on this issue. Okay. All right. I want to thank you on engaging with and watching the lecture from Module 11. We'll see you next week.